Hello everyone, good afternoon. I hope it has been a good week for you as it has been for me. I haven't been able to record many videos the past week or so because my mom came to stay with me for about 10 days, and my mom is 82 years old, and well, each time she comes to visit, or when I spend longer periods with her, it dawns on you that you are no longer the one that's being cared for. You are the caregiver. It's the circle of life, and I don't know what it is, but when it's your parents, it takes some time for you to realize that each time. Maybe because my mom is not, she's 82, she's not like incapable of moving or getting her own food and stuff like that, but we can see that life has changed. But that being said, I did have a good time when my mom was here. We were chatting till late at night, and sometimes watching Tamil movies till like 3 a.m. So yeah, it was a nice time. Now that she's gone back to her home, to her house, my routine has been kind of like upside down. So I had a bit of a difficult time starting this video today, so I thought I'd come out to the garden because being in the garden always kind of invigorates me. I always feel that about plants and being out in nature. I don't have a huge garden, but just being amongst something green always puts you in a better mood. Inspires you to do something. So here I am in the garden, and today I would like to do a video on something to do with the garden. Let's see. So since it's gardening day, I thought I'll tackle this pot where I've done some, I made a few mistakes here. I had neglected it for a while, and well, leaves were turning yellow. But before that, what do you think these plants are? Spinach? Or is it really spinach? What do you think? Well, for the longest time, I thought this was spinach. And in Malaysia, it is called bayam. But this plant is not technically spinach. It's called amaranth. Well, let's talk about amaranth today. So this is how the amaranth plant looks like, the one that I have at present. Can you see that the leaves are elongated or longish, and the veins on the leaves are quite distinct. You can see the veins, and the stems are a light green shade, in color, not too dark. When the stems get really dark green, then basically they're quite old, and they'll be very fibrous and so on to eat. But this is basically a long-leaved variety of amaranth. Spinach and amaranth come from the same family. So basically they belong to this family called Amaranthacea. And this is the big family that both the spinach and the amaranth comes under. But the difference is that they are both of two genera, and the spinach is from the genus called Spinacia, and the amaranth comes from the genus called Amaranth. So there's a difference in how they look as well. Basically, this is how the amaranth looks. It's quite sturdy plants, and they have lots of leaves and so on. And the spinach is slightly different. When I do a video on spinach, I will talk about the spinach. But today, since this video is about my amaranth, let's just talk and have a chat about the amaranth. There are many varieties of amaranth. This one over here is green and a long-leaved variety. So you can see that the leaves are long. Maybe this one here. The leaves are long, and the veins are quite distinct as well. And then there's the green and round variety, where the leaves are a little rounded, not long like this, and I think they're a little softer as well. I have had great success with the long leaf variety, which is this one, and the round leaf variety. And then there's the tri-colored variety, and then there's the red variety. Red, no, they tend to call it red spinach, tri-colored spinach, stuff like that. But they are actually under the genus Amaranth. So there are many kinds of Amaranth, and I recently read that Amaranth goes back in history, goes back to a long, about thousands of years ago, when people actually used the Amaranth, not so much for the leaves, but for the seeds. And that's when I got kind of intrigued that Amaranth seeds were considered a type of cereal or a type of grain. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Apparently, in ancient India, the amaranth seeds used to be used as for medicinal purposes, and they used to be used in Ayurvedic practices. So this plant is indeed an ancient plant that has survived till today and is still being used today. Isn't that fascinating? And I also read that this amaranth seeds was actually harvested and used as a type of grain and made into like a cereal in some other parts of the world. I think it was South America, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, I would never have guessed that this simple plant that I call bayam, or in Bahasa Malaysia, or spinach, was actually used to harvest grain. And well, technically, in order for a seed to be considered a grain, it has to have 3 layers. It has to have the bran on the outside, then the endosperm, and then it has to have the germ inside. But amaranth seeds, like the quinoa, are basically just seeds. So they're not technically a grain, but they are considered, I think they're called semi-grains or quasi-grains, something like that. And they can be used like we use grains. They can actually be used to make, apparently to make porridge, to pop as well. I'm not very sure about that. But this has made me all the more intrigued and curious to see what can actually, come out of this plant. So if you guys are interested, do follow me, because I am really excited to see how I can harvest the seeds and how I can actually, see if I could use it like a grain. So the real reason I wanted to make this video was because I wanted to share with you the mistakes I made in this pot with these amaranth plants. The mistakes I made in sowing the seeds, and also in the fact that I had neglected the plants for a bit, and the consequence of my neglect. So I wanted to show what happens when you kind of neglect watering the plants, and when you sprinkle it in a certain way. But then I went down the rabbit hole of reading about amaranth, and I discovered all this new information about amaranth, and I got really excited, and then I had to share it with you. So, I mean, isn't it really interesting that this plant is so ancient and it was used for so many different purposes than what you normally use it for? So I just found that interesting. Apparently, this plant, when it flowers, and the flowers apparently grows in like a long trellis, and they're long flowers, and I'm not sure whether it's this variety. I am going to see and wait and see whether that happens, but it can be used in floral decorations as well. So can you imagine the red amaranth, and then if it has this red trellis, and you can use that in floral decorations? Wouldn't that be awesome? So I just wanted to share that with you guys. So one mistake that I made in growing this was that I don't know whether I can call it a mistake, because I might even do it another time, is that its amaranth seeds are so tiny. They're like little black dots, and it was so difficult for me to like poke holes and put one by one. So I got a little lazy, and I just took a whole bunch and I just sprinkled it all over the pot. So that resulted in a lot of amaranth babies growing. And amaranth is a surface germinator, meaning that the seeds only properly germinate when they come in contact with a bit of sun and the air. So the seeds the plants were sprouting out at different times, because at different times they would, when I'm like, moving the soil around, they would contact the air and so on. So what happened was this pot got crowded with lots of plants, and thus resulted in a lack of nutrition. So the leaves started to yellow. I'll show you. So this is what I mean by the yellowing leaves. When you see that in the bottom over here, these I just fell off. Some of the leaves have become like yellow over here, yellow, and like over here, the bottom, you might see some. Has become prematurely yellow, and this has become, see, it's yellowish. So that has happened because of the lack of nutrition, and also because of the lack of water, because I wasn't watering the plant as much as I should have. And another thing that happens when the plants don't have enough nutrition or enough water is that they start to prematurely bolt. Can you see this? This is premature bolting, and these are the, like over here, these are all the seeds. Actually they're flowers, and eventually they will bloom, and then there'll be seeds in there. So this plant is actually a little early for it to be bolting. So that is what has happened. There are a lot of stems which have started to bolt over here, over here. So that is basically not good if you want to harvest the leaves to eat, because the leaves become a little bitter when the plant starts to bolt. So if you do want to sow the seeds like I did, and just take a bunch of seeds and you just sprinkle it at random, then you must remember to make sure that you thin the seedlings out. Meaning, thinning means when the seedlings sprout, you take a pair of scissors and you cut off the ones that you think are, the ones that you think are one too many. You just, so that you give each seedling a little space around it to have enough nutrition to grow into a strong plant. Some people go over and they just pull out the seedlings that they don't want, and that is quite that's not quite a good method to thin the pot, is because when you pull out a seedling, you may affect the roots of the seedling next to it. So it's much better to just kind of snip off the seedlings around the one that you want to keep, and that will ensure a good pot of amaranth, or a good harvest of amaranth, which is nice and juicy and so on. So when they have enough nutrition, the leaves won't yellow prematurely, and the leaves will not bolt like over here too early, because bolting makes the leaves a little bitter and so on. So today, what I'm going to do with this already overcrowded pot is to snip off some of the stems that have already started to bolt, because bolting makes the leaves bitter. So I'm going to snip off the ones that have bolted, and harvest the leaves, whatever leaves that I can, like over here. I've just snipped this one off, and I'm going to snip a few more, as many as I can, in order to give like these, in order to give the babies some room to grow. So let me see, I'm going to snip this one off as well. So when I snip these leaves off, and I have taken off more of them, in here the babies, can you see the babies? Over here will have more room to grow. They will have more sunlight, and they will have more room to grow into proper plants. That is the only remedy that I can think of at the moment. And at the same time, I am going to keep these three, this 1, 2, and 3, and see how the flowers actually bloom, and if they actually form a little trellis, and whether I could actually collect the seeds from here. So that will be the end of this episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. Here's Shakila Shanmugam signing off. Bye, everybody.